Imagine the 5th of May in Rome. Not the postcard Rome of gelato and golden hour, but the Rome of the Foro Italico, where marble emperors watch from the sidelines and the red clay has a memory longer than any statistician's hard drive. The sun sits high enough that the shadows shrink beneath the players' sneakers, and the air has that dense, heavy quality that tells you summer is already clearing its throat. This is gladiator country. Tennis doesn't get more theatrical than this. And onto this stage in the opening round of the 2026 Italian Open walk two women who have nothing in common except the desperate, beautiful need to prove they belong. On paper, if you're skimming results over a cappuccino, it looks like filler. World number 42 versus world number 45, a routine Tuesday afternoon. But that casual glance would be a Category 5 mistake, because what we actually have here is a combustion chamber. A clash of two career trajectories moving in opposite directions at such violent speed that the air between the baseline and the back fence feels electrically alive. Let me introduce you to the two souls stepping into this arena. On the near side, wearing the weight of an archipelago, Alex Eala, 20 years old, left-handed, from the Philippines, a nation that has poured its tennis hopes onto her shoulders so completely that it's a wonder she can swing a racket without the pressure bending her elbows. All season on hard courts, she's been a revelation. Timing, aggression, fearlessness. But red clay, that's been a different story. Every time she stepped onto dirt in 2026, she's walked off with the same suffocating sting. On the far side, Magdalena Fręch, 28 years old, from Lodz, Poland. Barely 18 months ago, she was the player nobody wanted in their quarter of the draw, a career-high ranking of number 22, a woman who could grind your soul out through your nostrils. Today she arrives in Rome carrying 5 consecutive singles losses like open wounds. The bruises aren't just fresh, they're still bleeding through the bandages. Neither of these women can afford another loss. Something or someone has to break. I am utterly fascinated by this match, and I am going to tell you exactly why Alex Eala will walk off that red dirt with her hand raised. The ghost that walks beside Fręch. To understand the gravity of what's about to happen, you have to start with Magdalena Fręch, because her current condition, her invisible passenger, her shadow dictates the entire emotional landscape of this match. Roll the tape back to 2024 and you'll see a different animal. Fręch was a force of attrition. She won Guadalajara, she reached the final in Prague. She went toe-to-toe with Aryna Sabalenka in Wuhan and pushed her to the brink of collapse. She battled into the second week of the Australian Open. By October of that year, the computer had her at number 22, every single point earned through sweat and stubbornness. She was the ultimate grinder, steady, dependable, suffocating. Her break-point conversion rate was the stuff of legend. When she saw a second serve, she broke her opponent roughly 57% of the time, putting her in the 93rd percentile of the entire WTA Tour. She was a human backboard who could return anything. Her game wasn't built on overwhelming power, it was built on depth, metronomic consistency, and a sadistic love for 10-shot rallies that ended only when the opponent blinked first. But time comes for everyone, and 2025 was unbelievably unkind. The magic faded, the shots that used to paint the baseline started landing 2 feet short. The rallies she used to win through sheer willpower ended with her framing the ball into the stands. Her record slipped to 15 wins and 25 losses. She finished the year ranked 59th, a brutal fall from grace for someone who had just tasted the top 20. And 2026 has offered no salvation. She walks into Rome with a 10-11 record for the year. But here's the statistic that should set off alarm bells. On clay, her supposedly friendliest surface, where she holds a career 55% win rate and just reached a final in Merida 6 weeks ago, her form has completely cratered. Look at Madrid just before coming to Italy. She played Sarah Sarib's Tormo, straight sets loss, but the scoreline doesn't tell the story. Fręch generated only 3 break points in the entire match. She won just 59% of her first serve points. That's not a bad day, that's a systemic breakdown of her core identity. Put yourself inside a grinder's mind. A player whose entire livelihood depends on outlasting opponents, on suffering more than the person across the net, requires an immense, overflowing reservoir of self-belief. Confidence is the bedrock. If you don't believe you can hit the 25th ball, you'll miss the 5th. And confidence is the first resource that drains away during a 5-match losing streak. The internal monologue changes, legs feel heavier, margins feel tighter, the racket starts whispering doubts. So what does this mean for Eala? It means she's walking into a match against a veteran who, by every measurable metric of recent form, is diminished. I'm not saying Fręch is finished, her career numbers on clay are too robust for that, but she is visibly compromised. And in the shark tank of professional tennis, that is blood in the water. The young woman under construction. Now let's talk about Alex Eala. Because if you're a casual fan who only checks scores on your phone, you might completely misunderstand her 2026 clay season. You saw the loss to Leylah Fernandez in Stuttgart, 1-4, brisk and painful. But that was only her second match on red clay for the entire year, against a player who moves on dirt like she was born in a silk bed. You saw Elise Mertens dismantle her in Madrid, 2-1, ugly on paper. But Mertens won 93% of her first serve points that day. I don't care if you're playing on clay, grass, hardcourt, or the surface of the moon. When your opponent does that, you get flat. But Madrid also told a different story. In the opening round, Eala faced Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, a former Grand Slam finalist, a veteran with hundreds of matches on European clay, and Eala dispatched her 6-3, 6-3 with a calmness that bordered on chilling. She served well, yes, but more importantly, she constructed points with the patience of a seasoned dirt baller. She used her left-handed angles to drag Pavlyuchenkova out of her comfort zone, opening the court and hitting into empty spaces. So when I evaluate Eala's clay swing leading into Rome, my main takeaway is not failure. It's that she has proven she can win convincingly on this surface, provided she faces a specific profile of opponent. Eala thrives against players who give her time to set her feet. She destroys players who don't overwhelm her vulnerable serve with raw, unadulterated pace. She excels against opponents who want to engage in prolonged, rhythmic baseline patterns because in those patterns, her return game and ground strokes become absolutely lethal. And Magdalena Fręch fits that profile to absolute perfection. The X's and O's, a tactical autopsy. Let's get granular. Fręch averages 3 aces per match. 3. Her average serve speed sits squarely in the bottom 20% of the entire women's tour. She doesn't blast you off the court. She spins it in, invites you into the rally, challenges you to beat her. The catastrophic problem for Fręch is that Eala's single greatest weapon is her return of serve. When you're serving in the mid-90s mph, and your opponent is treating every second serve as a personal insult and an invitation to attack, you're in for a very long, very painful afternoon. Multiple high-level analysts have already called Eala's return one of the most terrifying among rising stars. Watch her feet when the opponent tosses for a second serve. She doesn't just hold her ground. She steps inside the baseline, takes the ball early on the rise, and drives it back with penetrating depth that immediately robs the server of time. Against a massive server like Alina Rybakina, that aggressive posture carries risk. A big first serve will jam Eala, pin her back, shatter her timing. But against Fręch, a woman who might hit 2 aces in 3 sets, Eala's return prowess will operate at maximum capacity without fear of reprisal. Every time Fręch tosses the ball, she'll see a 20-year-old standing 2 feet inside the baseline, loaded like a coiled spring, ready to dictate from stroke 1. But I hear the obvious counterargument. Eala's serve, it's a known vulnerability. She averages barely 1 ace per match. Her first serve percentage often hovers in the low 60s, and her speed is among the lowest of anyone in the top 50. On a clay court where the soft surface acts like a sponge absorbing pace, giving the returner extra fractions of a second, this weakness should theoretically be amplified. And Fręch is an elite returner herself, converting nearly 4 breaks per match. So isn't Eala walking into a buzzsaw? In theory, on a whiteboard, yes. But tennis isn't played on a whiteboard, it's played on dirt. And this is where the magic of the left-handed factor changes the math entirely. Eala's serve may lack pace, but it makes up for it in geometry. She generates angles that right-handed opponents find awkward, unnatural, uncomfortable. The left-handed slice serve out wide on the ad court is a nightmare weapon. It pulls the returner completely off the doubles alley in a direction they almost never move. And on clay, this is magnified tenfold. The red dirt grabs the ball, and the heavy slice serve bites, kicks, and skids away at angles that defy right-handed muscle memory. Fręch's entire return positioning, her footwork, her split step, will require constant agonizing adjustment against a spin direction she almost never sees. There are perhaps a dozen prominent left-handers in the entire WTA top 100. Fręch will have faced very few of them over the last year, and I guarantee she hasn't faced any during her soul-crushing 5-match losing streak. Eala's serve might be slow, but it's a geometric nightmare for a player whose confidence is already rattled. The psychological warfare beneath the surface. But to truly predict this match, we have to elevate beyond topspin and court positioning. We have to look inside their heads. Alex Eala arrives in Rome with something that completely transcends her recent clay court win-loss record, a 2026 season narrative of ascent. She went to Dubai and battled to the quarterfinals, pushing Coco Gauff to the absolute limit. She made the 4th round at Indian Wells. She pushed her way into the last 16 at Miami. Her career-high ranking of number 29 came just 2 months ago. Yes, she slid to number 42, but that drop corresponds almost entirely to the transition to clay, a surface where she has historically struggled. And here's the crucial distinction. Eala knows she struggles on clay. Her coach Joan Bosch knows it, the whole team knows it, and yet they deliberately booked a punishing, packed clay court itinerary. Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, then Parma, Strasbourg, and finally Roland Garros. This is not the schedule of a player trying to protect her ranking. This is not a player hiding from her weaknesses. This is a deliberate, calculated embrace of suffering. When Eala loses on clay right now, she is learning. She is not a player in crisis. She is a player under construction, a 20-year-old absorbing data, adapting her footwork, learning how to suffer on the dirt so that 3 years from now she can win Paris. Magdalena Fręch exists in a completely different psychological universe. When you're 28 and your ranking has violently slipped from the low 20s to the mid-40s and you can't buy a win after 5 straight losses, the internal calculation is dark. The question keeping you awake in your hotel room is, am I building toward a grand slam? Was 2024 my absolute peak? Is this the beginning of the end? I'm not suggesting Fręch is consciously telling herself she's finished. Elite athletes fight that thought, but the body knows, the subconscious knows. Confidence during a losing streak at 28 feels like trying to hold sand in your fist. Confidence during a learning curve at 20 feels like planting seeds. Eala is playing for the future. Fręch is desperately trying to hold on to the past. How it unfolds on the Foro Italico dirt. So how will this actually look when the umpire calls play? Eala will come out like a heavyweight looking for an early knockout. She'll stand aggressively inside the baseline on Fręch's second serve. Her goal in the first 10 minutes is purely psychological, to establish, instantly and violently, that every single service game Fręch plays today will be a brutal, breathless contest. No free points. If Eala secures an early break, and given Fręch's shattered confidence and weak delivery, this is highly probable, the entire complexion of the match shifts. Fręch is fundamentally a frontrunner. She needs the scoreboard in her favor to play her best suffocating tennis. Her career numbers show she wins 62% of matches when she takes the first set. But in 2026, when she gets dragged into a third set, her win rate plummets to 44%. She is not a comeback artist. When she falls behind, she tightens up. The racket gets heavy, the shots land shorter. From Eala's perspective, the key is to deny Fręch the one thing she craves: rhythm. No long, comfortable, hypnotic rallies straight down the middle. Eala must use her left-handed advantage to dictate spatial dynamics. Her heavy topspin forehand will naturally pull the ball cross-court into Fręch's backhand side. Fręch uses a two-handed backhand, more stable than a one-hander, so she won't be completely overwhelmed by the bounce. Instead, Eala needs brutal side-to-side redirection. Make Fręch run. Exploit her passivity at the net. Fręch is a baseline dweller who comes forward rarely and wins only about 60% of those net points, a poor metric for a professional. Eala, who trains at the Rafa Nadal Academy, has absorbed Spanish clay court variety through osmosis. Expect drop shots. Expect short slicing angles. Eala will drag Fręch out of her comfort zone, pulling her kicking and screaming into the front court, forcing awkward volleys and low-bouncing scrambles. And then there's the physical dimension. Eala is 59, Fręch is 57. On clay, the shorter player often has a slight advantage, lower center of gravity, better balance on the slide. But in this specific stylistic matchup, Eala's height gives her critical leverage on her ground strokes and her terrifying return. She can take the ball earlier on the rise, get on top of the bounce, absorb pace, and redirect it at acute angles that a shorter player cannot physically generate without jumping out of her shoes. Matches at this level are decided in the margins, and 2 inches matter. Finally, the geography. We are in Rome, not Paris. The Foro Italico clay plays significantly faster. The crushed brick is laid differently. The balls zip through, and the dry early May sun bakes the moisture out. That heavy, high-bouncing mud ball characteristic that makes traditional clay court tennis agonizing for players who like to take the ball early, it's reduced. Eala's entire game, quick reflexes, taking the ball early, redirecting pace, hovering around the baseline, thrives on fast clay. If they were playing on a slow, wet, heavy court in freezing rain, that would brutally expose her weak serve and reward Fręch's attritional grinding. But the Roman sun and the fast Foro Italico dirt neutralize Fręch's defensive grit and amplify Eala's offensive striking. The prediction. Taking all of this, the deep analytics, the psychological warfare, the physics of the court, the trajectories of their careers, here is my definitive prediction with no hedging. Alex Eala wins this tennis match, and she does it in straight sets. Projected scoreline, 6-3, 6-4, or perhaps a slightly tighter 6-4, 6-3. I do not expect a bagel. Magdalena Fręch is far too experienced, proud, and competent to be utterly humiliated. Even in the depths of a losing streak, she will fight. But Eala will ruthlessly control the tempo from the return side, breaking Fręch's serve at least once, probably twice per set, with relative comfort. Eala will manage her own service games just well enough, using those tricky left-handed angles and unpredictable variety to keep Fręch off balance and prevent her from establishing the suffocating return pressure she desperately needs. My confidence rests on a tripod of three undeniable factors. First, form trajectory. Eala is building, imperfectly, yes, frustratingly at times, but ascending. Her clinical victory over Pavlyuchenkova in Madrid proved she has the tactical discipline to execute a winning game plan on red clay. Fręch is in freefall, declining by every measurable standard. Second, structural stylistic matchup. Eala's most terrifying weapon, her aggressive return, is matched directly against Fręch's most glaring liability, her soft, predictable serve. The combination fundamentally favors the Filipino player. Third, psychological weight. Alex Eala has nothing to lose. She's a young player on her worst surface. Every round she wins on clay is house money, progress a bonus. Magdalena Fręch is a veteran drowning in a slump, desperately trying to arrest a terrifying slide. That kind of desperation can occasionally fuel a miraculous comeback, but much more often, especially against a young, fearless opponent, it accelerates a collapse. The racket will feel like it weighs 50 pounds for Fręch on the big points. The one narrow path for Fręch. As an analyst, I have to acknowledge the alternative reality. There is exactly one scenario where Fręch wins. She would have to serve vastly above her historical averages, hitting her spots with pinpoint precision, pushing her first serve percentage well above 65%, and sneaking in 4, 5, maybe 6 aces. If she can do that, she neutralizes Eala's return advantage and forces the match into grueling, neutral baseline rallies. And in purely neutral, 50-shot rallies on clay, Fręch's years of experience, pattern recognition, and polished dirt court pedigree would give her a distinct edge. But that scenario requires Fręch to miraculously play above her current level, asking a player whose confidence is shot, who is riding a 5-match losing streak, to walk onto a massive stadium court and produce her best serving performance of the year. That is asking for a miracle, and I do not bet on miracles. What this match truly represents. There is one final piece of context. The winner of this dogfight does not get a reward. The winner faces Wang Xinyu in the second round, a massive hitting, terrifyingly powerful Chinese player ranked solidly in the 30s, who hits the ball so hard it sounds like a gunshot. So for Eala, winning this opener is not just about collecting a single victory. It's about building the specific kind of early tournament emotional fire that has fueled her best results all season. In Dubai, she won a grueling opener and rode the wave to the quarterfinals. In Auckland, she surfed first-round belief straight into the semifinals. If she wins her opener, her self-belief compounds exponentially. She becomes a different, vastly more dangerous animal. And pull back the lens even further. Alex Eala is doing something historic. She's the first Filipino player to occupy this kind of rarefied space in the brutal, lonely world of professional singles tennis. She's 20 years old, ranked 42nd in the world. She has grown up sweating on the Rafa Nadal Academy courts, absorbing the ethos of the greatest clay warrior to ever live. She has stepped onto stadium courts and beaten legitimate legends. And yet here she is in Rome, actively choosing to compete on the one surface that gives her the least reward. The surface that exposes her flaws, demands she transform her entire approach, forces her to become something she was not naturally built to be. She could have skipped the clay, she could have rested, she could have waited for grass or hard courts, but she didn't. This is not a player avoiding difficulty. This is a warrior actively seeking the fire. Magdalena Fręch, the veteran, the grinder, the former top 20 player desperate to save her season, is the obstacle standing directly between Alex Eala and the next critical step in this massive, ongoing construction project. When you strip away the noise, look at the cold evidence, trace the form lines, analyze the matchup dynamics, map the psychological terrain, and factor in the fast, dry Roman courts, the conclusion is inescapable. Alex Eala clears this hurdle, not easily, not flawlessly. There will be frustrating errors and moments of tension, but she will win clearly. This is her moment. Her matchup, her match to take.